Hello, innovators. I'm Dustin Miller, PolyInnovator. Today I'm talking with Maxine Cunningham, CEO of Pick My Brain, and she is reimagining the future of work and creative knowledge monetizer, entrepreneur, a startup founder, trained economist, can't speak today, I tell you, super brain with 100 plus brain dates, environmentalist, personal brand strategist, content creator, and competitive W2's beach volleyball player. So thank you for joining me on the Polymath Polycast.
Thank you. Thank you for reading all my hats.
Yeah. And so this is a show by PolyInnovator. Please say hello to the innovators in the audience.
Hi, innovators.
Hello and welcome to the Polymath Polycast. Well, and you're a former economist turned CEO. You're on this mission to help gather people around the world to organize the smartest and most creative people and make them more available and accessible and useful to society. And I really love that goal. And I think it's a great way to start the show, but the way I like to break the ice is to have you share something about yourself that no one knows about you.
No one knows about me. Oh my goodness. What does nobody know about me? Let's see.
You're a
Okay,
pretty
I
open
used
book.
to. This one's random. It just popped into my brain. Because I was like, what does no one know about me? I used to competitively bowl. My parents got me into bowling when I was young, and I was really good. And I made the rep team, and I had my own bowling balls with my name
Wow.
on them, and my own bowling shoes and a bowling shirt, just like the
Wow.
nerdiest sport ever. But nobody
Fancy.
knows that. But then when I went to high school, like, and I did it when I was young, and I stopped. But whenever I went to high school and we went bowling as a crew, I would just be able to pull out these like they'd be like, "What the?" Anyways,
That's
nobody
fancy.
knows that.
Well, now they do.
Now they do.
Do you still have that bowling ball?
I don't. It must be somewhere in my parents' like basement dwelling. Yeah, somewhere
Yeah.
probably. I'd love to pull
That'd be
it out.
cool. Just like one day, just pull it out, and maybe you could make a newer
Yeah.
version of it too. Like, 'cause since we were a kid, now you can get like an adult for size and
Yeah.
whatnot, and
So
just be
yeah.
like, boom, pull on outfit.
Have you bowled before?
I used to do it a lot when I was a kid, but nothing
Yeah.
professionally like that. Just we had a pretty cool bowling alley. Now we have a new one that's like neon and
Oh,
has all this like black lights and stuff like that,
oh,
which is
yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. It's a weird sport. Very obscure.
yeah,
But yes.
I did a lot of Wii bowling. I will say that.
Oh yes, of course that makes sense.
Yeah, but I did like we have a cool bowling alley in town. That was always fun. We always did roller skating as well.
Yeah, it's like it used to be the place to like gather. Like in
Yeah,
the 80s and 90s, that was the place to go and talk and do the things. And now it's like kind of the very old school.
yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, no one knows
Uh,
that.
I do remember being a kid and playing pool at the bowling alley
Yeah,
and
that's cool, yeah.
hustling some of the older people. I
Yeah,
wasn't even intentionally doing it, but I'd be like, I'm not that good, and then end up being really good and screwing them over by
amazing.
accident. Yeah.
But
So, starting the questions off here, what was your mindset 5 years ago, and how have you changed since then?
yeah, I was thinking about that question. I don't know if my mindset has changed, my experience has changed, but I think throughout my entire life, my mindset has always been you can do whatever you want. I've always kind of like made my own path, made up, yeah, my journey. And that never really left me and served me really, really well in university. I did university a little bit different. I moved out a little differently. Like I started I have never applied for a job in my life. I've
Hmm.
never like built a resume. So I think I've just carried that through. And yeah, it hasn't changed. The situations I find myself in have changed, but I always come with that mindset is like, okay, anything is possible in this space. What do I want it to be? Yeah.
Well, and I've seen a lot of multi-potentialites and polymathic people evolve a lot, even over the past 5 years. But it seems like for you, you've almost changed a lot of things at multiple levels and many different areas too. So how does it feel to kind of just be in that completely new situation?
Yeah, it's interesting when you change worlds,
Yeah.
like jumping from like yeah, my economist world, investment banking world, startup world, like who you do start to become within it. You still have your like same core values, but your whole surroundings are different. Your culture and your friend group is different. The words that you have to use slightly are different. But it's really nice. I find they all stack, right? You like they just keep complementing and feeding off each other, and it's really nice when you can get those to stack and like use all the world, like the benefits that you got gathered from that last world you were in, and bring them towards the new world and
Hmm.
have them like settle and push you further ahead in that field. And it's something I find actually multi-potentialites and polymaths do really, really well, is like take those
Yeah.
insights and just like bring them into the new world and embed them in that new world. Yeah.
Yeah, the trans-contextual thinking and being able to bridge different areas together.
Yes. Yeah. Just take, yeah, it's like pattern recognition and then just
Mhm.
applying it to like a different set of circumstances, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think on top of that, the systems thinking, and as an economist, you probably had that even more so. So it's probably like a super polymath, super multi-potentialite in this case.
I find what economics gave me more systems thinking for sure. How does everything fit together and why does it fit together? But more than that, also, I can't help but think on an aggregate scale.
Mm.
Like everything I think about is aggregate, not micro. It's like, how will this impact, yes, one person, but also everyone? Or
Mhm.
how does this impact like my area, but the world? And it's like, I'm always looking for the math equation or the formula that is that aggregate formula. Um,
Mhm.
so in economics, it was like there you have kind of two divisions. You have microeconomics, which drills down into like local economies, and then you have macroeconomics, is like how does all the systems feed into all of the economies? And I always was like this macro world, like how do all these systems impact all the local economies? How do all these systems work together globally? How do different countries even interest rates and their policy impact and lead to different outcomes within those countries. And like, what if we took those policies and applied them globally? What if I always do this question, what if I was a world dictator,
Yeah.
and how could I use the levers to allow the planet to do what it needs to do or whatever. So yeah, always thinking from that lens, economics has like embedded that into my brain.
Love
Yeah.
that. And I always been very fond of economics, but I wasn't good at the mathematics aspect. And so I never really picked it up super well. But
Yeah.
it makes me think too. There was a micro polycast episode I made like 3 seasons ago called Macro and Micro Focus. And it's
Oh,
talking
nice.
about like not just focusing on the day to day tasks, but also what you
Yeah.
need to do quarterly and yearly and understanding from both perspectives. And once you find
Yeah.
that balance, and same
Yeah.
thing goes for economics too, obviously, like once you find that balance, that's how you make that progression.
Definitely. Yeah, I like that. That's exactly the best way to kind of analogy it for your own life. You're thinking like day to day all the time, but like also are you zooming out and imagine yourself at 80 and 40 and 30, all these different ages and what that's going to be like? Yeah. How to
That's
get there?
interesting.
Yeah.
Well, let's start off also. I mean, we kind of already went kind of complex already, but I was going to say let's start off basic with what is Pick My Brain?
Yeah, sure. So Pick My Brain is a tool that was built and designed with the intention of helping people package and sell their knowledge and experience in kind of new ways on their own terms. So at its baseline, it's a platform that really, yeah, really guides a user into thinking about different ways to make themselves available to society. And then on a collective level, once everyone kind of taps into like selling their knowledge, it becomes we're aiming for the world's first knowledge marketplace. So
Right.
this space on the internet where we can all go and buy things like conversations or sessions with individuals from all over, and like yeah, shop knowledge. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting too because as an instructor for fitness most of my life, a lot of people I've talked to come to me for my knowledge in that way. And so it's just interesting too, even people who are strangers, like at some point,
Yeah.
I don't even try to, but they'll be like interested in converting into a customer. And it's just
Oh,
interesting
yeah.
how can I share that knowledge in a modern way? Well, personal branding and content marketing came to mind, but
Yeah.
that's not really monetizing. It's more of just
Right.
branding and like actually exposing yourself. So
Yeah.
finding a way to actually do it in a modern sense. And I wanted to ask you too, what is the knowledge economy then?
Well, the service economy, which we're currently in, is like an economy where primarily what we're buying and trading with each other is services. A knowledge economy is an economy where what we're primarily buying and exchanging is knowledge. Right. So it's just the main asset, I guess, that's trading among users or citizens in the economy. So yeah, I just think as a former environmental economist, I think we really, really need to step outside of just purchasing any type of product-based anything because no matter what, it has like a quite significant negative impact on the planet just based on kind of how we build things and recycle things and commission things and distribute things. It's just like so heavy. And yeah, knowledge has zero impact on the planet, and it's compounded, and you don't have to ship it, and yeah, it's something that once you have it, no one can ever take it away from you. So yeah, I hope that we shift it again into like making this asset more available so that the economy can still tick without totally yeah, hurting the planet, because we just where we're
Yeah.
at, we just like really need to stop. And I really feel like unless we introduce a new thing to buy and consume that's like as addictive as products, I guess, to us,
Yeah.
then we're just like not gonna jump off that path. Yeah.
Well, in a little tangent, I don't know how long we'll get on this one, but it makes me
Yeah.
think of the rise of AI. When I talk to
Yeah.
people who are in the AI space, a lot of our jobs are changing. You said on many shows that like jobs that we have now are people that jobs we're going to have 20 years from now don't exist now, and
Yes.
or even 10 years from now, even that point. And a
Yeah.
lot of these jobs too that are going to stick around are the creative ones, the knowledgeable
Yes.
ones, the ones that you need either specialists or polymaths, like deep specialists,
Yes.
in order to do. And it
Yes.
makes me think about like how is the economy going to be when our products and services are no longer actually there? We actually have only people who have significant knowledge, either divergent or hyper specialist.
Yes. I think that's such an like let's talk about that, because like I think what we need to do is imagine an economy like that. What are we buying? Because the supply currently isn't there, right? And if the supply isn't there, consumers can't like imagine the demand. It's like this weird problem. But yeah, I really think that we are shifting to this creative economy as well. And I have this prediction written down in my journal that creators are going to be the highest paid citizens in the world in like 10 to 20 years, and just surpass a lot of the industries that we've typically seen as the highest paid. And I think, yeah, with AI and the reduction of having to do just so many things that take so much time, it just opens up more space for leisure. And the more space we have for leisure, the more space we have to create and enter that mindset. And yeah, I'm starting to see again on Pick My Brain, like these services that people are yeah, packaging and pricing and making available that I have never seen available on the internet before. And that's exciting. And it's because they are asked, like, listen, if you were to be able to package and price and sell anything that you would love to help someone through, what would that be? And their minds kind of get to start from that space, that like what is possible, like anything is possible. What do you want to do for individuals? And you can change it anytime. You can test the market really easily and see if it's available. And I think that space just allows people to go there. And I just want to push them there more and more, because it just starts to unlock. And once consumers confirm that there's demand in these creative offerings, I think the supply will just increase more and more. If you know, like, right, if you're a creative and you know if you package and price something, you've got a decent chance of selling it, that'll just push more people and innovation behind that. Just like, you know, kind of Amazon did. There's so many people that are like, you want to drop ship on Amazon, you want to learn how to make a bunch of money selling product. Like, you know, it kind of got, it's there. And I'm like, okay, what if it was that popular for creative services? What if there was a whole industry that's like, you want to learn how to sell something, you're super driven and so outside the box that people like will want it because it doesn't exist on the internet, we're going to teach you how to do that. You know, I wish I
Right.
said that just as much as like, do you want to learn how to sell this mug in every single country for next to nothing?
Yeah. Well, and one idea that keeps popping up in my brain is this idea. It's kind of like a bridge between the service or like the product and creative economy, but like 3D printing is growing as well.
Yes.
And how do we design certain products? Like that is a knowledge, like understanding how to make a cup, understanding how to make a trophy or whatever kind of statuette you want on your shelf or something like that.
Yeah.
The 3D models and understanding how to actually turn those models into the actual product or item that you're printing. That is a service, but it's also product, but it's also knowledge. So it's kind of a bridge between them all. And so like someone could actually sell the actual 3D models as a service or as an item. Or I don't know. It just came into an idea that way.
I need to pull up a profile because I literally just onboarded a brain who he's calling himself the prototype guru. His name is Kenneth, and he's from Norway, and that's exactly what he's combining. He's a prototype guru. He's got a little workshop with so many 3D printing tools. And yeah, he basically wants to help anybody create anything. You know, they'll have a conversation about it. He'll AutoCAD it. He'll print it, or send the designs to that individual so they can print it at their 3D printing location. And yeah, start to like innovate. You know, like give people the opportunity to create whatever they want. So yeah,
Well,
total hybrid.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, for example, I want to build a tiny house. That's what I want to live in
Yeah.
the future because they're more efficient, they're sustainable, and you can build it
Yeah.
with better materials. And I want to
Yeah.
build it like super ultra modern, high tech smart home.
Nice.
And that's what I want to build. But if you do
Love
it with a
it.
regular size house, it's way too expensive.
Yeah.
And understanding how to design that, I'm going to have to consult a lot of people who build tiny
Yeah.
houses. But a lot of them still build them in the old ways of building houses. You use the same lumber and the same siding, the same kind of styles of houses. But if you're going for more of a modern sense, you need a
Yeah.
different take. And so someone who does tiny houses, I could pick their brain or something like that.
Definitely. And like again, what a creative, like not only could you pick someone's brain to design your tiny home, but maybe you could design your tiny home with the intention of showing other people that they could have a high-tech tiny home. Because the
Yeah.
image that's kind of planted in my mind from the tiny home documentaries that I've watched and the movements and the ones that I've visited are right, like very minimal, no tech, very woodsy. But like I love the idea. I haven't seen one that is full of tech, that's hybrid.
Casita.
What's
There's one
that?
that's called Casita in
Yeah.
Texas. I didn't
Okay.
mean to interrupt there. Sorry, but
I love it.
no, it's a cool high tech home full of like smart devices, and it's the only one I've really seen. But there's some in like China and across the sea that are
Right.
more high tech ones too.
Yeah, well, I mean, just like even planting that seed in people's minds, right? You can downsize and go tech, and what would that bring you? What is it living like in a space that has that? I think that'd be so fun to design up. Yeah, that's really
Yeah.
creative. Yeah, love that.
On the Innova Buzz podcast,
Yeah.
Jurgen's fantastic, by the way. You asked, "Can you consume too much knowledge?" And because I think he had asked you something about knowledge and like, "Oh, it's a great thing." But is there an issue with knowledge economy? Like, I thought that perhaps there could be, because if being a dilettante is actually a major issue for a lot of polymathic people who learn so much but then do nothing with it. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I want to kind of, yeah, let's have this conversation. What do you think? I mean, Socrates asked this question a lot too. Like, is if you learn knowledge and you don't apply it, what does that mean? And what is the application of knowledge? How does that shine through? Does it have to? What does that? Yeah, like I mean, if can I consume too much knowledge, and if I don't put it into action, does that mean that's a waste or not? I'm not sure because I think indirectly that knowledge will change the way I am able to have conversations with people. That knowledge will give me new stories to tell and share when I talk to people. It'll give me new ways to think. In that moment that I am downloading that knowledge, I'll still alter, like I'll be able to download someone's perspective into my body, which might make me empathetic in some reasons. So although I might not be applying it, I'm still in the atmosphere of learning. I'm still connecting with someone. I'm still absorbing someone, and it enters you. So I still think you can't consume enough knowledge because knowledge is like, it's just everything. I don't even know what is the definition of knowledge. We should look that up. I should know that. But yeah, is there a failure? I don't want people to feel bad. It's like people like now like consume books with like such velocity without like being able to sometimes even enjoy it. They like feel like they have to turn it into something. I'm like, do you? Can a conversation with someone be equally education and entertainment and inspiration and motivation and just energy?
Well, I think it's still an output. A conversation, us having this conversation now, is still an
It's an
output.
output. Okay.
And so, as long as there's some kind of use of that knowledge, I think that's a
Yeah.
good way of thinking about it. So, for
Yeah.
example, I like to look a lot of trivia videos, especially for a while there. I was watching Matthew Santoro, who does like 50 facts per video. And these
Oh,
are probably pretty useless facts for the most part. Like, I'm not going to use these in most cases, but
Yeah.
a lot of them have come up in conversations. Like, if I went to the karaoke bar and made conversation with
Yeah.
somebody, I could
Yeah.
bring up one of those random facts.
Yeah.
And it's not super useful in most cases, but it is a way of building a bridge. And I looked up the definition for knowledge.
Yeah.
Facts, informations, and skills acquired by a person through experience or education,
Right.
and whether they're theoretical or practical, but understanding of that subject.
Okay. So yeah, so if there's an output, you think then that's do you think you can consume too much knowledge?
I think there's so much knowledge out there that
Yeah.
even if you were to consume too much knowledge, you're still not going to consume enough. I
Yeah.
know that's kind of an oxymoron there, but there's so much out there. There's so many YouTube videos being uploaded every day.
I know.
So here's a little thought experiment. I don't remember where I've learned this from, but there's so many. It's probably from one of those facts videos, actually. There's so many like restaurants in New York City that if you went to a new restaurant for every meal for 50 years, you wouldn't still ever get anywhere close to finishing just in that one city. Just think about it across the world. There's so many restaurants.
Wow.
And that same example can be applied to any area. There's so many videos, so many podcasts, so many articles. That's why I created modular degrees, to actually be able to consume it as many as you can, and as like a certain factor. But organizing is very important, prioritization. But there's still just so much out there that you can't really consume it all.
I agree. And maybe then it becomes like what you were talking about, your modular university. Maybe it becomes in like this strategic way that you, again, stack it, right? What is the perfect way to kind of like make sure your time here on Earth, you get to dive into some certain topics. Like, what is that? How do we modularize learning? You know, we've done it really, really well with online classes, or we're starting to do it well, but I think we can do it with conversations as well. I would actually love to make people playlists of people to talk to. It's like not a playlist of music, but a playlist of conversations that you should have with certain people.
That's interesting. That could be another aspect to the mod degree. So basically,
totally.
the template. The template I made now has like sections for articles, videos, and podcasts, MOOCs, audiobooks, and books. There could be another one for conversations.
1,000%. I almost wish that whenever I take a course, I could go practice it or speak to it or converse over it, or, you know, because that's my form of applications when I can talk it out. I always miss that part of university. I was so mad that I went to university for like 8 years to study to be an economist, and the university never set me up with one economist. I never spoke to an economist until I got my job. And I didn't know what an economist did until I got my job, or how it could be applied even before I got my job. It was very focused on the math and the theoretical knowledge. But I'm like, the university failed me. I want to supplement that. One of my dreams with Pick My Brain is to, definitely adjust the way university is taught and complement it with, as part of your degree, you also get like 20 hours to converse with people from all around the world about what you're learning. Here they are. You know, so by the time you walk out with your economics degree, you also have like a network of 10 to 20 economists from around the world that are practicing economics in different ways, which will likely lead to jobs and like ways for you to like understand how it's being applied. Like that would be such a nice compliment, but I haven't seen it in any university come through, so would do that.
It's an output thing, though. Once again, it's being able to talk about your knowledge, but there's also the idea of creating blog posts. So personal branding is an aspect of the mod degree that I think about, where maybe sometimes people need to have some way of showing their knowledge. Well, talking to people and having them, like talking to you, obviously is going to make both of us happy, but we're also going to have knowledge about the other person, that if I were to talk to someone else and like, hey, I know Maxine's really knowledgeable on this topic, and like it's a what is the word? Endorsement.
Totally. Actually, I'm so happy you brought that up, because that's one of the things that we've learned so much about Pick My Brain is that yes, we help people build profiles that help them package and price their service, and yes, we list them on this global world marketplace so people can shop them. But the third element for this all to work and be super powerful is this community component, where we introduce all the brains to each other consistently for the purpose of understanding what each other does, so that we can all act on each other's best interest and learn. Like, unless we all know what each other is the go-to for, we can't effectively trade. And so we actively bring our brains together at least once a month, sometimes 4 times a month, just to engage and find out, like, get them in a breakout room and discover what that person across from you has deep knowledge in. You have 5 minutes, like, find out everything you can about that person. And we do that a few times, and we're just seeing that word of mouth referral start to talk, and people are able to, it's kind of like how the brain synapses work, or mycelium mushroom work. They transfer information among the network. And I think we need to do that as a collective, for sure. And I'm just like trying to create the conditions on Pick My Brain so that we can do that really, really effectively too. Yeah.
Well, it makes me think of kind of like a panel discussion, and that really kind of brings up the idea of Clubhouse. And I can't personally use it, but I saw that you and Perry have been using it a lot. So I wanted to know what your thoughts on that were.
Oh boy, I have so many thoughts about Clubhouse. I'm so sad I didn't come up with it. I think it's brilliant. I think it's, I love audio only. There's a few things I love about it and that I've noticed about it. Number one, it's probably the most diverse audience I've seen on the internet. Like in terms of like just breadth of people, backgrounds, diversity, culture. There's just so many different people on it, which makes it really interesting. The ability to just drop into different rooms and listen to real-time conversation that isn't being recorded is like really nice. Like right on YouTube, it's always sitting there. So I feel like it's a little bit different. Offers a different type of, I don't know, engagement. And then the people that are going on stage and hosting and holding space, like you have to be able to perform and express your ideas in real time to be, received or followed. And what I really enjoy about that is that I've seen on every other platform, you just have to be really good at advertising. You have to be really good at content creation. And with content creation, you can hire someone to, make it look really, really good, even though there might not be a lot of depth behind it. Or you can use, these methods to get your content out to more places because you have more budget, even though, again, your content isn't as good. On Clubhouse, you can't do that. You have to speak. You have to show me in real time that you have knowledge, and I can, through voice and through, again, real-time conversations, assess, I don't know, with more certainty whether you know your shit. And on the internet, I can't sometimes. Like, even as a trained as even as someone who went to university and knows how to do research, sometimes I'm like, I don't know if I can't tell if this is good or not. And there's so much work behind discovering what is good references and resources and sources. But I don't know, on Clubhouse, I find, hearing someone speak for 5 to 7 to 10 minutes, I can generally kind of, have a better indication of what that person is all about. So I really, really like that. And then just the as a tool itself, it's kind of when you fill out your Clubhouse profile, you have this opportunity to select interests that you're into. And the list of interests that they have pre-selected for me to categorize myself so that they can suggest the right rooms for me is, again, the most broad and colorful set of interests I've seen on the internet. So they're taking that next level of me being able to actually accurately describe what I'm interested in, and granularly too. Whereas I feel like on LinkedIn, it's like, which of these like 100 boxes do you fill into? And these 100 boxes are like super old school careers that have been around for centuries. And I'm like, I don't fit into any of these boxes anymore.
Yeah.
And I don't think a lot of us do. And Clubhouse is like starting that new innovation of like, oh, okay, I can fit into these boxes. Like I can mix and match, and like these like resonate with me. I really like that.
Well, like on these old platforms like LinkedIn, you and I would just fit into the internet box. That's it.
Right.
And it's like, that doesn't make any sense. I can't use Clubhouse because I don't have an iOS device, but I've heard a lot about it from other people, and I've seen a lot of people share stuff. It's interesting because it is interesting who's going on there, who's talking. I don't like the whole fact that it's not recorded, because I went on an app just like it called Voice Hub last summer, and throughout last year was experimenting with that and having those live conversations and kind of like panel almost in a way. And it wasn't as popular, so there wasn't as many people on there, but it was the same kind of feeling. Like you had these kind of just live, raw kind of conversations, and you had a choice of whether or not to record it or not. But it's just interesting how, like you said, you can go in there.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you too, what are your thoughts on something like that on Pick My Brain? So I think like that's a good way of kind of going about having like panel discussions with different brains.
It is. I am so grateful that they came around when we were just scaling. I feel like they are actually the most complementary. I might actually focus all of my attention on Clubhouse as like the medium of housing our brains. And actually what is happening in those rooms that I've noticed is so many people are offering their advice and their knowledge. You can get so many insights and coaching and things on the platform for free. But usually on stage, what the people will say is, if they do want to go further, DM me on Instagram and I'll help you. And I want that to change to book a session with me on Pick My Brain. I help a certain number of people on Pick My Brain one-on-one. So book a session and we can go further with that. So I see like a real lane of turning that, like, oh, you've won me over, you've impressed me, you've inspired me. Now can I take this engagement off and convert it? Or can I go further with you? Is that door there? And it's really interesting because on Clubhouse, the two platforms that you can integrate with are Twitter and Instagram, and they're right on the bottom. They're like a crossroads, like Twitter and Instagram, and there's a space right here and there's nothing there. And I know they're not going to integrate with LinkedIn because it would be so off brand. And I'm like, this is the space for Pick My Brain. There's got to be a Pick My Brain profile right here. It makes so much sense. To put it on this tool. So yeah, that's one area I'm interested in.
it's very peculiar that Instagram and Twitter are the two places that they're having there, because both of those are becoming competitors for them.
Totally, but it's funny because like when I'm listening to someone on Clubhouse speak, right? Because no one's
Hmm.
seen me. The first thing I do is I go look at their bio, and another thing, like Clubhouse's bios are so creative. They're just like that. And they're just actually an open space, but how people are typically writing them, full of emojis, full of arrows, full of like funny stories, and like they're starting to actually identify the things that we've pulled out in people's Pick My Brain profile. Like, what are all the hats you wear? What can people book you for? So I'm going to check out their profile as they're speaking, and then if they have their Twitter and their Instagram, both give me a different insight into that individual, right? We all kind of have these all different, I don't know, different ways of sharing our content on each of these platforms.
Hmm.
Like what I share on Twitter is very
Different
different than what I
context.
share on Instagram. Yeah. So you can go get this like personal photographic element of them on Instagram, and on Twitter you can go kind of see what like news they kind of talk about or what they tweet, which again just like gives you, it's so amazing how quickly you can understand someone in a deep dive, right? Like just check out a
Yeah.
few of their feeds, hear them talk, and I like genuinely feel like I can, I know enough to go further, right? We're reducing that time for you and I to like enter conversation and that one-on-one, which is really powerful, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the way you're explaining this makes it really interesting. I think the whole idea of what you're sharing is brilliant. Like, combining with
Mhm.
Clubhouse is really cool. My biggest thing is like, what about the people who aren't on Clubhouse though? Because like 2/3 of phone users are on Android, and
I know.
iOS only has
Yeah.
a third,
I
and
know.
it's kind of like that really cuts off a big part of the population there. And there's plenty of people who can be that guy you mentioned earlier who does all the AutoCAD stuff and the
Yeah.
3D printing. He's probably an Android user considering his techiness, and so I'm wondering
Yeah.
like how that might be,
Yeah, well,
because I can't use.
I know that, and that's so sad, and it's so interesting that they started that way. I actually sympathize with them as a tech founder
Yeah,
because it's just like you can't launch everything at once, and they have
yeah.
expressed that they will be opening the platform to Android users soon in their next iteration, so it's coming. But yeah, like, what do you feel like as an Android? Do you feel FOMO? Are you a little bit like, are you? I've known
I'm
people who
I'm
went and
mad.
bought an iPhone just to get on Clubhouse.
I made a blog post saying I will not buy an iPhone to get the Clubhouse app. Like
Oh,
I went kind of take a stand, boycott kind of thing.
yeah,
And it's not like I hate Clubhouse. I just really hate how they didn't do that, because most apps nowadays I feel like should do both launch. Or that
consider
should be a
both.
priority. Yeah,
Yeah,
I get what you're saying though. Like you only
yeah,
have so much bandwidth. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like I get that, but I
yeah.
just feel like nowadays in a modern sense, apps should do both.
Yeah, for sure they should, and they will. I'm sure that they will open up. I'm very curious. I would love to ask them like, why did you choose Apple first? Like, did
Hmm.
Apple, was there a relationship there, or did you choose the smaller subset purposefully, or did you like, was there any strategy behind that, or did they just pick and build their
Well,
iOS
it's
app first? I have no idea. Yeah,
I don't know, because a lot of people do that with Chrome. Like the tool we're using right now,
yeah,
Riverside, you really have to use only Chrome. Like you can technically open it in Firefox, but there's a
yeah,
big issue of like our recording may not save if you're in Firefox,
yeah,
and so there's a lot of optimization. Most websites go for Chrome first. I'm sure
yeah,
you probably did with Pick My Brain too.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, and
it's
that's
interesting.
it's so much work behind. Like I remember listening to this podcast of this tech founder, and he had launched his app, and again it was for Apple versus Android first, and like all these people came on and like complained, and he's like, it's he just stopped, and he's like, it's not like I just have to press a button and it's on Android. I literally have to build an entire new stack with my
Mm,
developers and budget this much in order to do that. So I need you guys to understand that it just doesn't like people think that you're just like,
magically appear.
I didn't put, yeah, I just excluded you. I'm like, no, no, no. Like even for Pick My Brain and all the sizes of computers that exist, optimizing for all of them is like
Yeah.
actually so much work. So I think if we, and that's really hard, like, right, us as society, there is a certain benefit we get when we standardize certain things and agree on certain sizes or principles or metrics. But then
Mhm.
you kind of you don't want to like squat. You also want to let that open and let people design whatever they want. But that makes it the owner. It makes it so onerous on each other because there's so many different things to optimize to. And if you leave one party out, you're like, I don't know. You feel bad about it.
Yeah, well, I know there's a lot of ways of translating the code to different versions, but it probably wouldn't be up to par per se when it comes to quality. And with a new platform like Clubhouse or Pick My Brain, you're
Yeah.
doing something new,
Yeah.
and the ways of coding it is probably unique in the way like, they actually make the databases and how they react to the front end, that kind of thing. And so,
Totally.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a big job. I've never built a tech tool before. This is my very first tech tool, and I just like happened to go for the hardest market, like the two-sided marketplace, global, peer-to-peer knowledge and financial system. Yeah, huge directory. And again, anticipating AI, right? What information do I need to collect now to enable the matchmaking later, like thinking 5, 10 years out. But yeah, it's quite a feat, or it's a different way of applying, I guess, my knowledge to. I didn't realize how much is behind building tech, like how difficult and easy it is. Right, I am able to build a global marketplace system as a girl. You know, I'm just like someone that is able to do that using the tools that I have at a relatively low cost as well. So that's super empowering. But it is also like a feat. You know, you got to really think about it. And you're right, you're doing something new, while you're like testing something new while designing something new and prototyping it at the same time and developing your procedures at the same time. So it's just a lot. It's a lot. Yeah.
Well, and I think the beauty of Pick My Brain is being able to connect people to other people on a new
Yeah.
digital medium. It's interesting how like with LinkedIn, all these different ways, it's still kind of an old basic way of thinking. I'm going to connect with this person versus
Right.
like picking their brain and actually doing some reason to connect, so to speak.
Yeah, I love that. I think LinkedIn had its time, and I think Pick My Brain is could step in as the new LinkedIn for the creative world, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What what sort of unique ideas can we take the platform then?
Can we what?
Where can we take the Pick My Brain platform? What
Like
kind of
what do you,
unique pathways do you think?
like pathways in terms of like how to use it, or
I'm thinking like just overall in a macro sense, where will the platform go? Like we talk about Clubhouses, like having
oh
some sort
yeah.
of audio platform, maybe
Yeah.
perhaps underneath it, that kind of thing. You've mentioned
Mhm.
gamification and other shows. I'm just
Yeah.
curious what pathways.
Oh my gosh, there's so many pathways. I sometimes I imagine every piece of content that is out there becoming 3D with the integration of your Pick My Brain profile. So I believe in a world where every time I watch a video or read a blog or listen to a podcast, that there is an opportunity to go further. Always. I don't just consume that content. I could step in, and the person that wrote that blog, I could go and book a session with. So I really want to like, yeah, increase the 3D-ness or the engagement of content that's floating. I find content very flat. So I'd love to like integrate it into pieces. That's like one thing I've been thinking about. I like had a long time when I started it. I put up this vision of when I go to Google, you know, you can search by images, by videos, by web. I want to search by brains too, right? Like let's imagine I put blockchain in Google, right? I've got my web searches, which I can do a deep dive. I've got my social media feeds, I can do it. I can watch YouTube, I can watch images, but maybe all the people in the world that are open to sharing and teaching me about blockchain also come up, right? So that would be a really cool integration. Um, yeah, those are like the main ones. Is that kind of what you meant by pathway?
Yeah, I mean, just it's more of where do you take these answers, basically. Like, I don't
Yeah.
have a particular answer in mind, per se. Something
Yeah.
that came up in mind, though, was Gravatar. So that was like an old way of WordPress connecting, it's kind of like a mesh over WordPress, where if you needed a profile picture, make an account real quickly, Gravatar kind of became that thing.
Yeah, I remember
But
that.
that's all it does, is like a profile picture. What
Yeah.
if you just absorbed Gravatar, and then Pick My Brain became that replacement, in a way?
That would be cool. I was actually talking to my friend that's really good at he understands how to like scrape knowledge from anywhere and build anything with that scrape knowledge. And I used to build scrapers for financial tools, so I like know that you can build something that goes collects information whatever you want. But yeah, what he was expressing was that if you gave me Dustin your LinkedIn, your personal page and maybe your Instagram, I could program a scraper that would build you a Pick My Brain profile and spit out something that you'd be like, you know, let's see if you like it, and you can sign in and log in to do that. So our thought was like, right, because I want to onboard the world's like smartest and most interesting people. Could I build a crawler? Even that's like, can you go find, you know, we've got all these lists in the world, like the 30 best photographers in the world, the 30 best CEOs in the world. We've got these lists already. So could I build a crawler, build them a profile, and then build a system that sends them an email and be like, we built you a profile. Would you like to contribute 5 hours of your time to the system, because you've been identified as one of the world's best? And so it is our mission to make sure that you plug some of that knowledge back in and it's accessible at this new medium level, this one-on-one level. All you have to do is click yes if you like what you see. you know, and like and going more outbound than rather like than convincing people to build a profile, going to find them and be like, you have been selected, you
Yeah.
know. Yeah.
Well, I actually had something like that happen to me with the podcast
Cool.
platform, even
Yeah.
though mine's podcast, but like it was Podlink, I think it was, or some kind of pod aggregator where it would check out different RSS feeds and basically would just
Yeah.
share your feed and share different information and present it in a unique way compared to other distribution tools or
Yeah.
distributors.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
they came out to me. They emailed me directly. I guess got my email from the RSS feed and emailed me like, "Hey, we made you a page. All you got to do is log in." And so that already exists at this point. So
Honestly, anything you can dream up exists. I've learned. I don't know if you've learned
yeah.
that. You just like kind of think it out, and you're like, oh, this is a thing. So it's really just the limitations of our mind, which like comes back to mindset, right? And allowing people's minds to go that far, like that could be a complete strategy that's super creative, right? That we could decide to double down on. All right, we are going to build a tool that goes and finds the world's best, and the world's best is defined by this, and we're going to make them a profile, and then we're going to send them an email, and they just have to click one button, and then they're live, and then right after they go live, we're going to upload all of those services. You know, it's just so
Yeah.
possible. Yeah.
Well, and I just mentioned it because of proof of concept too, because I think your
Yeah.
idea is good. I think it should. I think that's a good plan for you. I had another idea too
Yeah.
that I wanted to share with you that just came up. There is these Reddit videos. People would get like r/ask Reddit, like various different like popular Reddit posts, and using a Python scraper would like scrape the post, take a screenshot, get the text, and do text to speech, and then do a certain delay, add a background track, add a background, and they'll make a full-fledged video with automated voice, automated text, automated animations, and everything basically, and then automatically using the YouTube API upload it to YouTube. And these channels will grow exponentially because they can basically get the best consistency. They can get quality videos that people will watch through, and there's also the idea of like AppSumo, for example. They make a video for every item they put on their platform. They have a specific way of making their videos, and they try to go through it each time. What if you could combine those, where you basically use a tool on your own site that scrapes your Pick My Brain profile and makes a intro video automatically for every brain?
Oh my gosh, that's so good. I love that. I think that's
I don't know the logistics of it per se, but like I just thought I'd share it.
I love it. I love it. This is exactly how actually Pick My Brain will evolve. It's like the brains start to now give us ideas, right? What they want to see and what ideas that they have when they think of this new concept, and then we just like kind of like, okay, cool. Well, yes, like it's an omni-channel company, right? We just feed as much from our brains as we do from our own ideas of what we're seeing at that aggregate level. Which kind of feeds into the notion, one of the questions you were asking about, like, I want the network to own the platform so that they feel motivated to share those ideas with us, right? And they feel, and we can reward them for feeding those ideas to us. But yeah, that's really good. But then at the same time, I'm like, I just had someone submit a profile, and her title is 1 minute video resume girl. And so what she does is she kind of has a formula similar to what you were kind of describing at AppSumo, where she asks you for a certain number of pieces of content and then makes you a really condensed video that she wants to now get people to pay her to do on Pick My Brain. So it could be like a hybrid, right? Like I'm like always like, I always want to hire someone to do it just to keep that like, people employed and doing creative gigs, but at the same time, like, I mean, I love AI and simplicity and scraping too.
Well, perhaps a tool could scrape for her and then just give her the output, and then she could make it.
That's true. Yeah, she should probably just do that to reduce her admin cost. That's a good idea.
Well, it just makes me think too, like there's probably certain sections that you have already allocated as different text boxes on Pick My Brain that if someone were to create uniquely, they could just do a text to speech and the video could be made pretty quickly. Okay. And you've mentioned a couple things. You want people to own the network, own the platform, so to speak. And you've also mentioned blockchain. It makes me think of blockchain. Like a lot of these social networks like DTube or Hive.blog and all these social platforms on the blockchain, they do that with cryptocurrency. So that could be a future for Pick My Brain as well.
It is definitely on our mind. We have a part-time researcher that works at Pick My Brain. We buy like fractional research time, and like the projects that I have him mostly on are decentralized network, user-owned platforms, a currency that we could potentially use at Pick My Brain, or a credit-based system. And just explain, the platform lends itself to that so well. So recently we just had to actually peg to the US dollar. Because we're in like 13 countries now, and paying people out in their individual currencies there's just too many transaction costs based on where we're at. It's still not as seamless as we need to, so we decided to make the decision to peg. And actually that actually helped us. It will help us in the future when we decide to depeg from the US dollar and maybe peg to either our own currency or our own coin. And that just like kind of opens a lot of doors. And then with the user-owned network, it makes the most amount of sense. My goal as an economist and as a human is always to increase the amount of well-being for as many people as I can as possible. And well-being is such an interesting algorithm of an equation, right? It's got so many factors in there, and it's different for different people, but there's still some similar weights in there that we all have: financial well-being, spiritual well-being, relationship well-being, etc. But user-owned platforms, it doesn't make sense to me that the value that a platform creates is locked up to like 6 to 10 parties, because they're actually not deriving all the value of the platform or maintaining it at all. So it's like misallocated. And the example that I always like to refer to, actually, I got to credit Jared Lanier. He was one of the first creators of the internet, and he wrote this book called Who Owns the Future? And he talks about this idea a lot, but he referred to this case study like Instagram. Let's just take Instagram for an example. I think they're worth $30 billion, and I think majority of that wealth has been transferred to the 8 founders and like 3 or 4 banks. And I'm like, ooh, okay, so on an economic scale and a monetary scale, that money is going to be held and not distributed with those very few participants. And it's just going to probably stay in their world because it's like transferred from family to family. It's really not going to get recycled. And like, that's so like, that's a grotesque amount of money for a very small amount of group of people. But then you look at why did Instagram sell for that much to Facebook? What gave it that much value? And it's like, again, all of the contributors that are consistently uploading content to it. And this is the same for Instagram, for YouTube, for Facebook, for Twitter, etc. But all of these users are actually maintaining the value of the platform. And so in my mind, like we're seeing in the blockchain space, they should be rewarded. They should own a piece of the ownership of that because they are creating the value. That's how the stock market should technically. That's how it's
technically,
but it doesn't. And just even if I was to go back to do my PhD in economics, I would totally math this all out. But I would love to do the assessment of just even taking Instagram. Let's see the wealth that got locked up for these few people who got to benefit from this huge valuation of the company. And let's look at a case study where if it was user owned, how much money would have been put in the pockets of individuals around the world, and how much benefit would have come from that? Like how much, right? Because that money is now like it's moving, it's being spent, it's like putting in multiple pockets. And yeah, I just feel like that financial model has to change. I don't want to raise from 6 banks. I don't want those 6 banks to benefit from the value of my platform because they have the cash. I really want the brains share price to go up every time they buy and sell knowledge. Like how cool is that incentive too? I have such I struggle investing. I invest quite a bit because I used to be an investment banker, but I've quite an ethical, I've got some values, and it's really hard to match them with what I want to invest in. And I've never seen a tool that I can invest in something that has 0 environmental impact, that increases directly the price of my share. I have no control over that. I really can barely move the stocks that I own. But in Pick My Brain's case, I could really give people the opportunity to own a share and express that, hey, the more knowledge you consume on this platform, the more you sell, the more your share price is going to be increased. The more people you bring onto this network, the more you're benefited. The more the system sells, if Pick My Brain does $1 billion of knowledge commerce, this is how that will be distributed to everyone who owns it. And I'm seeing that momentum happening. I don't know if you followed the GameStop story, where Reddit took on the VC.
Wall Street.
Wall Street. That's just brilliant. So fast, so powerful. I could talk about that for a whole hour. But we're starting to see the people understand that if they collaborate, they have so much more power than these monolithic.
Because all they did was the exact same thing that they do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and now they're saving the gorillas. Did you see that?
I
I
did
love
not.
them.
Oh,
Yeah.
but I'm not surprised, honestly.
Yeah, so now like they're just focusing some of their attention on adopting gorillas because like they have this
Hmm.
joke about apes, and so you go on this Reddit stream and it's just like people all around the world that are saving the gorillas, and I was like, this group of people could literally coordinate to help the planet in a way that is so much more effective and powerful than I have seen at a policy level, at a company level. So it's just really, I feel like it's connected to blockchain. I feel like it's connected to user-owned networks. I feel like it's connected to crowdsourcing. Like it is coming. And I hope I can
Well,
like enter. Yeah.
yeah. Well, something that came to mind earlier I forgot about was like Kickstarter, Indiegogo. I feel like
Yeah.
that maybe not integration, but a kind of GoFundMe esque aspect to Pick My Brain too. Could be
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah, a little bit. I've thought a lot about using a crowdsourcing platform. Actually, the most recent case study, the U.S. just changed its regulation when it comes to raising money from the crowd. So Kickstarter is allowed because you can invest, but you're getting a product back. If
Hmm.
I asked you to invest and I wanted to give you a return on that investment, that's a whole nother set of rules and regulations, which is currently being worked on. So this like previously only accredited investors were able to invest in companies. To
Hmm.
be an accredited investor, you have to actually have quite a bit of wealth to do it. And so already right there, only the wealthy were able to invest in startups, but it's changing. And the US actually just implemented a new law a couple weeks ago that stipulated that you don't have to be an accredited investor. Anybody can now invest up to, I think, $1,000, and any startup can now raise money from anybody up to $5 million a year. And then the case study that took advantage of that regulation changing over was, are you familiar with Gumroad?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a really cool company that allows you to, again, productize and sell PDFs on your own terms. But Sahil, the CEO, he just raised $5 million in 24 hours from
Wow.
his community. He was like, hey, community, Gumroad's going to raise some money. We don't want to
Hmm.
raise it from the bank. Anybody can invest 100, minimum 100 up to 1,000. We're going to cap it at 1,000 because we want a bunch of people to own it. And in 24 hours, he raised $5 million. So he completely bypassed what startups typically have to do. Our only really way of raising was through banks or private
Hmm.
investors, and now he doesn't have to do that. He doesn't have to do that. So I think I was very excited about that case study.
No, that's fantastic.
Yeah,
And something I wanted to mention earlier, but we got distracted by something else, was the blockchain thing again.
yeah,
Because on DTube or Hive, which are the two ones I use the most,
yeah,
was they had like influence and the cryptocurrency. So the more you create, the more you do stuff, you have the more influence you build up, and the more
yeah.
influence you can also spend it on certain things too. I think, but like if you didn't spend it, you would build it up, and that's kind of like your virality in a way. And I
Cool.
wonder if that cryptocurrency could also go into that whole pick my brain GoFundMe aspect down the line too, because it would just feed right into it perfectly.
I think so. One of the overlays how I'd like to use crypto or imagine that business model working. Are you a member of Audible? Have you ever used Audible? Okay, so I
Yeah,
love Audible. It's like such a good platform, and again, their business model is
prescribed. Yeah.
perfect because it's like, hey, pay us this monthly fee, and every month we're going to give you a coin, and then you can use that coin to buy any book in our site. It doesn't matter what the book costs, you get that coin, and I love it, right? Because it's so simple. It makes me read more for sure, and it's got its gamification too. Like I always love to see, like, have you reached
Yeah.
this echelon of reader? But I love that model because it's demand driven, and once Pick My Brain has a big enough supply base, I imagine being like, Dustin, you should sign up, and for this subscription where it's this much, and every month you get to pick any brain on our site. And like, typically brains cost anywhere from $100 and $250 an hour. If you sign up with this credit, you'll get it at this rate, right? Which is what Audible does too, right? You don't have to pay the market price of the book because you're bought into the credit. But what that does is, number one, it encourages you to explore, which again, Audible does for me. It encourages me to always go browse the books. It encourages me to consume something really good, books, because consistently I'm getting that coin.
Hmm.
And it gives me a deal. So I
Yeah.
think that could definitely work with crypto really, really easily. Just find the value of what that coin would be. Put a price on, general price on people's knowledge. So yeah, I'm still thinking about how to get there, but I do like it. Audible's one of my favorite business models.
Well, that coin the GoFundMe aspect,
Yeah.
and then the crypto, they all really come together with Pick My Brain, it seems like.
I know it is. It's like I know it's like I know it's a lot to think about. It's overwhelming. I can't sleep all the
No,
time.
it's the polymathic approach, really.
It is.
That's the
It
thing.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, well, considering you've launched this company, you're an active content creator and economist for sustainability organizations in the past. You have spent time even playing competitive volleyball. How have you balanced this interdisciplinary, multi-potential life?
Yeah. How do you balance it?
How did you balance it?
How am I balancing it? I that's such a funny question because I don't like actively think about how to balance it. I just am so attracted to certain things that feed into other areas of my life. So, for example, the beach volleyball. When I play beach volleyball, it helps me so much in business. And so when I'm feeling like I need to, I don't know, adjust or hit a certain different element of my brain or think differently, I'll go play a game of beach volleyball, and come back and it'll complement my business life. So it was easy to balance in because I would like have cravings when I needed this sport to complement what I was doing. And yeah, so that kind of was one area. Same with the sustainable development, like working as an environmental economist for a number of years. Um, Again, similar to Polymath, taking everything I learned in that system and those rules and like how the Earth has these planetary boundaries and like how the Earth systems need to be kind of in a circular economy, and
Hmm.
how mushroom networks work and how forests actually feed each other. All these things I learned about nature, I was able to pull into Pick My Brain. Um, so it's like I have just seen the power in jumping into different worlds and taking the highest level insights from those worlds and embedding it into Pick My Brain. So I just feel like to be the best, to build the best platform in the most conscious way, I need to kind of sit in a bunch of different worlds. Like yesterday, I just like was like, oh, I need to go and network in a completely different group. Like I love to just jump in groups and like see what this world is like. So I joined this networking group of like regenerative people are super into regenerative, I don't know, processes and circular economy, and I just like kind of jumped in their world and immediately I got an idea that I applied to Pick My Brain. And like
Hmm.
another week I jumped into, I'm not a mom, but I wanted to go see what moms talk about and what moms are worried about, what they're concerned about, so I jumped in their world and like,
Hmm.
got a sense of what is really important to them. And again, an application came over to Pick My Brain. So more than like actively balancing my life, I just have like this understanding and this like complete validation that doing that will benefit my mission right now.
It's a curiosity thing too.
Yeah, so curious.
Well, and you actually gave me a insight as how I was when high school. So years ago, when I was in high school, I would
Yeah.
jump between different tables and just meet different people and be
Yeah.
part of their group, that group, that group. And
Yeah.
cliques weren't really a thing when I was a teenager, but
Yeah.
they still kind of were in a way. And it was interesting how just joining these different groups and understanding these different minds is
Yeah.
what was driving me and that kind of thing. And I love how like jumping between different pods, like you're saying.
Totally, totally. It's so fun. And that's like brain dating. That's like our global event where you just like get put in a room and you're gonna go meet three
Mm,
people and you're just gonna be like, oh, I didn't know you existed, or
yeah.
before this day, and now I do, and that changed me in some way.
Brain date. I like that idea too, and it's interesting because these interviews I do are like the first round of I want to do. I want to do like a round two podcast, which will be
Good
like
idea.
you coming back on and doing a rapid fire kind of thing. And
Beautiful.
then I had this idea of a triple threat,
Yeah.
where the third time you come around, either it's gonna be like three people, like I invite you and someone else, and we all conquer together, or three guests and me, and it's some kind of way of just doing a unique. Not Socratic, but there's a certain term for it. I don't remember what it's called. You might know it considering your philosophy background too, but it's just one of those things where it was a unique way of conversing and having idea exchange.
Love it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I actually love the idea of, I'm a huge endorser of like doing multiple podcasts with the same people because I
Hmm.
love the stacking, right? Like, yeah, bring a guest on, ask them where they're at, come back and follow up. It's
See
so
where
fun.
you've
It
been.
becomes a series. You could like totally build a series with all of your guests.
Hmm.
Yeah, I really like that.
It'd be amazing. Well, and so moving on to this next question here, something I ask all my guests is, what is a polymath to you?
Yeah, I was thinking about that question, and I didn't like research like the definition of it because I'm sure there's like
Good.
a nice definition. I was like, I'm not gonna look at that. I'm just gonna think about
Yeah.
like intuitively what it means to me. And again, it's what I've noticed about polymaths or what quality that they have, is this ability to very quickly go into a world, understand the system and bring it into another world that doesn't necessarily have that system, but apply it. They are like the glue of society. If I was to think of them as an animal species, in economics, right, you've got all these animals, and there's keystone animals, and these keystone animals are essential in the pyramid because they kind of feed all the other animals. So like bees, salmon, they're essential for like a lot of different integration. They pollinate all the flowers. Salmon, like, feed all the systems, and their life and death span, like drop nutrients like in so many places. And I kind of view polymaths as the same thing. They are the ones, like the bees, that are taking the pollen and mixing it. And I find in a world that has been so siloed, we're so monoculture, so stagnant. Yeah. There's no cross-disciplinary stuff that allows us to kind of like mix and match. Polymaths are essential, and I hope, like one of the visions I kind of have is like, where can you, like, I just don't think that there is that supply base of, can I go hire a polymath to come into my organization, and bring in other systems thinking into my organization. There's no avenue to bring someone that doesn't have experience in what you're looking for into, there's not that, I don't know, there's not space for them to, like, I wish they could just jump. They have an open door kind of policy. They get this like key code where they get to go hop in different worlds and be the bees. Just transfer and remap and map all the ideas. So that's just the vision I have whenever I think of polymaths and how I like want to support them. And what they kind of do for society. And I want to like have that conversation about how important they are for society more and more, and how we can get them pollinating.
Yeah. Keep going if you have to.
Yeah, well, just one other thing, like the visual of this, I can't stop relating it to the bees, but what's happening with bees right now, right? Our bees are dying, and it's because they can't cross-pollinate anymore because they have these fields and fields of one crop that they have to fly, and they can't fly far enough because these one fields of one crop are so big, right? And we never ever used to farm that way, and I feel like polymaths get stuck in that too. It's like there's this one way to do things, and you're like looking where to insert yourself and where you can cross-pollinate, where you can use your gifts, and it's just like exhausting to do it because, it's just like built in this like really, I don't know, unconducive environment to do what you do best. So that's like the image. It's just that they're bees to me.
I wrote that down. That might make it way to the title, because it's interesting too, because you were right, we're stuck in this silos, and throughout our entire history we've had generalists and polymaths, but we have not really adopted them for the past 100 years. In fact, we went the opposite route and really only siloed down and went for specialists, especially since the second industrial revolution. And we're seeing now that there's a rise of polymaths and this modern renaissance, if you will, with the internet. And there was a study over in the Max Planck Institute where, I don't know if it's of technology or whatnot, but the scientists did a study on how Homo sapiens evolved and why we evolved versus Homo erectus or Neanderthals. And what he was saying is that, him and his colleague, that it was the people who were generalists, people who were able to adapt to different environments and actually adopt new foods and new temperatures and climates. They were to adapt to those places because they were able to do that. We were able to survive as a species. Yeah. And they were able to cross-pollinate between different areas, so to speak.
I love that. I mean, it makes sense, right? The faster you can adapt to a situation, the stronger. Like, let's look at COVID. How has COVID pushed people to have to completely reassess what they can now do under the constraints that we have? And the businesses that were able to pivot the quickest are the ones that are surviving, and the ones that saw an opportunity really, really quick and launched are the ones that are thriving. And it really is the individuals that can do that at such speed. And I find polymaths can do that speedy, it just comes naturally to them. So that's like great. They are equipped.
You had mentioned before the show, and kind of in the last little question there, that you want to make polymaths more bookable, and you want to be able to give them a chance to actually, that's what I'll cut the part out, I'll go back to it, because this idea of like being able to have polymaths be that kind of person cross-pollinated for different business areas. And it's interesting just how, even growing up in my own experience, I wanted to be that person bridging different areas. People came to me when they had a problem, when even though I wasn't even in that department, that kind of thing. Wow. And I was able to bridge between those two departments, even after I stopped working in that main role.
Yeah.
And so, Please
Amazing.
share any thoughts.
Yeah, I think again, like, so to extend that kind of into like your ability to do that, you already have people identifying that you do that well. But again, I don't think it's sold that way. I don't think the industry knows that they can buy that. So my vision of making that supply available to the industry, and then like, again, why are we making that available? Because we need more cross-disciplinary. We need to map systems over. We need to find these hidden gems, and we need someone to do that can do that well. Well, polymaths are just like naturally inclined. That's the way they think. So what if every polymath in the world had a Pick My Brain profile, and that they were bookable either per day, per week, per month, or per year, fractionally for these companies? And then we went to the companies and said, did you know, you could hire someone specifically to just come and sit in your world and like tie in what they're seeing in all your different departments. That could be a role, that could be a service provided. And that service is going to illuminate so many insights that are currently like no one is working on, because everyone in your organization is so tasked to work on their thing. Bring in someone else to go and dive. Do you have, like, the question would be like, does your organization have someone that is tying all your departments together? And from my experience anyways, the organizations I've working for, like, no, definitely not.
Yeah, definitely.
Why doesn't that role exist? We can create it, right? Yeah.
An entrepreneur, as they would say.
Yeah, an entrepreneur. Perfect. Yeah.
Well, I remember, like, for my role, I actually went and created a new logo for the building I was in, the company I was in. Yeah. And I just did it out of curiosity and creativity. Yeah. And the leader of the building completely scoffed at it, didn't even look at it, didn't even acknowledge it. And it was just one of those things where, like, you could have just at least looked at it, said, no, we're not going to change it this time, but thank you for taking the time. Like, just acknowledge my work, acknowledge that thing. And now I'm going to have a negative opinion on that. I got over it. I know it might not seem like it. I got over it, but it's just a matter of, like, it's going to leave a sour taste. And there's no reason why you couldn't just look at it, kind of thing.
Seriously.
And that's just one example.
I get so sad when people put time and energy and effort into thinking about something and it's not acknowledged. Yeah, that's too bad. But I still, I hope that the industry is open. Like, I hope we can actually convince them that they need this person on staff. So even as a startup founder who's bootstrapped, which means like I have to make enough to feed my employees, I raised a little bit of money. But our researcher, I spend $10,000 to $15,000 a year on research, and I am like a very bootstrap company, and I have this theory that I think every company should have a researcher that's just like constantly doing research and innovating your ideas and checking different publications and keeping up to date on what's studying. And my researcher is basically tasked to study the knowledge economy, user-generated networks, user-owned networks, crypto. So they're feeding me the highest level of information that exists so I can keep moving towards that. And again, I like kind of signed a contract with him on Pick My Brain that he is my research guy, and I'm going to spend about $10,000 to $15,000 every year on him about that. So now he can dedicate space in his brain to do that for me, knowing that I will draw on him for now until forever. And I said, Ryan, the bigger my company goes, the bigger that research budget will increase. Right? Like, and what a brilliant contract for him, because of what I put in his mind, I was like, Ryan, just go get like 5 or 10 organizations that you really care about, and hopefully with overlapping research interests, and say, hey, listen, I know not every organization can and have a full-time researcher, but you can definitely have a fractional researcher, and this is the benefits that it comes with. So I think we just have to change our idea of employment. Same with a polymath. Like, could I have a polymath on for fractional for a year, pay them $5,000 or $10,000, and their only role I task them with, which would be so fun, I think, for someone that has that skill, is just to constantly think of new ways to iterate, like to combine all the ideas that are happening, to just have that overall, that synthesis of all the different departments coming together. Their role would just be to do that.
Just like how we talked earlier about the whole synthesis of all 4 of those areas coming together.
Exactly. Yeah. And I dream, like, can we create that job? Like, it's like, I want to actually be able to create a job and even make a Pick My Brain profile with no one's face and a stack of offerings. I'm like, who wants to apply to offer these things? Who wants to be available for $10,000 a year to do this for an organization? I bet you a lot of people would put their hands up,
Right. Well, and I shared my story earlier about that whole logo thing because I actually think it's a positive. Like, even though it's a sad story, I think it's a positive aspect because there's going to be tons of people like men and women who are in these different companies and different silos. They're going to be reaching out in a way. And all companies have to do is find who's reaching out and reach back. And there's this really interesting thing I've noticed when it comes to like LinkedIn or Indeed or any of these job marketplaces where they're looking for these unicorns or these multi-potentialites who are just not defined as that. They're these, if you look at the job description, they want all these different skills and these different like divergent ways, like divergent skills, where someone right out of college is not going to have that. It has to be someone who is like us, who is divergent naturally.
Totally. And who has a bit of hopping experience. Like I do an interview, I'm like, okay, tell me all the things, like you started this podcast with outlining all the hats I wore, right? I find that the most interesting. Like that's one of the questions on Pick My Brain is like, tell us about all the hats you wear. Like, are you an economist and an investment banker and a volleyball player and a podcaster? Like that helps me understand your ability to be flexible, your ability to apply your knowledge in multiple areas, your ability to like be in different worlds and thrive in those different worlds. It's just like there's so much behind that. And I find like a platform like LinkedIn really limits my ability to express that. I can't express that I it's not really of a place to tell people that I'm a volleyball player on LinkedIn. It's not it's not their thing. But I'm like, this is a part of me.
Well, and I ran out of space on my skills on my LinkedIn profile. I had shared so many skills on there that I actually had to delete a couple old ones in order to put some new ones that are more important on there. And it's like, sure, I'm not a master at all these different skills, but if someone were to approach me and want a graphic design, I have enough graphic design experience, I could do most jobs. The same thing goes for like social media or something like that. And it's just one of those things where like, why do I have to have that limitation?
You don't. And there's another thing, like what if you were just an absolutely available for everything guy at X number of dollars per hour? So I get to like come at you with anything. I'm like, hey, Dustin, could you, teach me how to do a podcast? Hey, could you make me a logo? Hey, do you think you could do some research on some innovation for me? Hey, do you think, could you teach me how to swim? Could you give me a workout plan? Like those are like not connected, but you are like an everything guy. That's like, no, I can figure out these things and I like to, because another commonality that I've seen between multi-potentialites and polymaths is that they don't like to do the same job twice. They're like, don't make me do the same thing twice ever, please. I'm like,
so boring.
So like, again, if you were just like available, like why can't 100 people in the world be available for like, here are 100 people who have been sourced to do absolutely anything you want for them. Dream it up and they will figure out how to do it for you. You pay this much per hour to get that done. Wow, that's awesome. What a skill.
Were you looking at my Pick My Brain profile when you were saying that? Because you remembered a lot of my skills.
Of course, I did my research as well.
That's good. Well, and it's interesting because like when I teach my fitness, at one point my boss told me to write down all the things I do and put it on a sheet and use that sheet. So that way there's a little bit of consistency involved. And it's like I have a program in my head. I have a way of going it. Like I do the warm up, and then you have kind of the first phase of exercise, a break, second phase, and cool down. I have that whole outline. But when I try to make that sheet and follow that sheet and like only pick from these things, I was like, I feel so conflicted. And then when I did the exact same thing, but this was out the sheet, it was much more natural, much more flow, that kind of thing.
Me too. I struggle. As they say, a CEO who wears two hats really well, and then like has like one that might crush them. And the one that might crush me is operations. I cannot, like, standard operating procedures make me want to die. Like I can't, like, and that is actually another commonality between multi-potentialites and polymaths. We're like, no, we don't write down our process. Our process is in here. And as soon as we do write our process down, we feel super limited. But I understand why those processes are so important, but I still can't bring myself to do it's such a struggle for me to operationalize my methods, or the way I do things. I'm like, no, I just do them. I'm sorry.
Well, one thing I will say is that I think there is a way to document, though. Maybe you can't really do it. Notion. Do you ever use Notion?
I try to use Notion. I'm trying. I see the opportunity in it. I see the connection.
It's so beautiful. Yes.
Some people are so good at it.
Well, after this call, we can maybe share what I do with it, because I think that would be a great way for you. Because I think for most people who are like us, these multidisciplinary people, we need a way to organize our information architecture. That's why I would describe it as Windows or Mac. They have like these folder structures, but it feels too confining, as in like boom, boom, boom. Whereas Notion, there's a lot of interweaving between these different areas. And like the databases, for example, every line of a database is its own document. And that was like mind blowing for me. So I always had to use like Airtable or Google Sheets and then have a separate Google Doc in order to have that together. So
Notion is combining that for you. That is good. It is really nice to interchange it. It's like, but it's, I just got to dedicate the time. It's like this blank canvas. I have to think about how I want to organize my stuff. I'm like, whew, that's a job.
I have a couple of resources I should put in the description for people too. I made a Notion operating system playlist, and I combined all the greatest like YouTubers for it that I could find.
Wow.
And I also made a blog post about it too. So I think that might be helpful.
That would be so helpful. And I would actually put, I know depending on how you feel about this, but that's something I would buy from you. Like, I think on everyone's Pick My Brain profile, I keep telling all the brains I'll probably do a class. I'm like, everyone here, let's spend some time putting together a 60-minute masterclass on whatever we want that is the most research, and let's pre-record it and let's sell it for $50. So at the very least, when someone is interested in us and can go further, they might be able to buy something like that from us. Or like, again, something I would probably buy from every brain, or a lot of brains that I'm interested in, would be their best YouTube lists, podcast lists, or books, reading books. Because I only go on recommendation based. I only buy things that are recommended to me or referred to me now, ever.
Yeah.
And so, but you know, I kind of want it to stay multidisciplinary. I want to go to someone like, maybe I go to, I don't know, some chemist in Austria. So it was so random. But like, maybe I just want an insight into his world. I don't want to dive in fully, but I could get some, I watch a few YouTube links that he says are really good, and I am able to like increase my knowledge in that area so fast because he is directing me straight to the source.
Straight to the good stuff.
Straight to the good stuff. And we all have that, because that is like what, you know, you develop that over a lifetime. You start to assess who knows their stuff. And who out there is in the space worth listening to. And that is what I'm interested in. I'm like, everyone should have their black book of like, this is, and how valuable that black book actually is. You know, I really don't trust advertising as much as I do humans yet. In reading and watching,
Well, speaking of book lists, I actually made a kit.co profile just of all the books that well, not all of them, but a lot of the books I like to read. Yeah. And it's just a way of like, I don't have my Amazon affiliates set up, but like, anymore at least. But that's what I made it for, is like, that's a good way of going about it. I don't know if this transferred over, because I think when I joined Pick My Brain, it was 1.0, but now in the like 2.0 new versions and stuff like that, I'm not sure if this transferred over, but I think Notion was one of the things I put in there. And in fact, actually, I found someone on LinkedIn randomly who was asking for help with Notion. And for some reason, I had enough time that week. I was like, hey, you want to set up a call? I'll just help you out, like help you set up. Wow. And I had a full-on like hour and a half of I just helped that person with Notion. And like that's a perfect use case.
That's perfect. I spent $300 for someone to help me with Notion a little while ago, just to give me it. Like, I was like, okay, I might dive into this tool. Before I decide to commit, I want someone to take me through their entire their process. So yeah, it was Jürgen. And Jürgen uses Notion beautifully, because I wanted to see how he set up his podcast on Notion. And yeah, for an hour and a half, he just took me through every one of his behind the scenes, and the lesson, like the learnings I got from that. And I got to stop and pause and ask questions, right? And guide the direction of the conversation. But no, I think one-on-one private tutoring should be available for absolutely every topic you could imagine. And Notion would be a great one. Yeah.
Well, you're going to have a field day after this call, I feel like. But something I wanted to ask you, too, it's kind of on the more random side. I think I get the mindset, but I wanted to ask, what was the thought process behind the .world TLD, top-level domain?
Yeah, okay, so it was kind of like a combination of like not being able to .com not being available, and being constrained to thinking very early in my days when I was first building Pick My Brain, knowing that I couldn't get .com, knowing that I didn't want .ca, trying to think, I was like, okay, .org seems like it's going somewhere, but that's mostly for nonprofits. I see .io coming out, and I was on the phone with this guy who sells domains, and we were just like going through, I was like, no, I don't like that one, I don't like that one, and he's like, what about .world? And I was like, whoa, shut the front door, really? That exists? And I just immediately was like, yes, that is it. I haven't seen it. I love it. I think it's so inclusive. I think it's so global. And so it was a combination of like him just reading all these domains and him showing me .world, and me just seeing just like instantly the vision of the .world. So even though it might not be, a lot of people would recommend probably going to buy the .com and stuff, I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. I really enjoy the .world. So it just suits our platform so well. So I was really stoked I got it.
Yeah, no, me too. That's why I wanted to ask, because I think .com's overrated. It's kind of boring. It's overpopulated, and I skipped it too. Overpriced? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I got I have two domains for poly-innovator, .tech and .space.
Yeah, I like
And
that.
.tech was the
Yeah.
first one.
Yeah, that's a good
And
one.
I had there was a good deal because like .world, .tech, .space, they all came out like the past like 6 years, 5 years,
Yeah.
and I was able to get like a 5 year deal for like $40 on the
Right.
.tech.
Right. That was
Yeah,
me too. It was otherwise I have to go like message this private person that owns Pick My Brain that told me he'd sell it to me for 40K. And I was like, nah,
yeah, no,
no. I
no.
don't need that. It's okay. The world, like it's so funny that we do that. But yeah, just like I don't know, I think I think what we're seeing, like it isn't going to matter as much going forward. You know, get creative with your domain. I don't know, it's memorable. Yeah.
So you mentioned gamification earlier, and that's something I've worked on with a mod degree as well. And there's an idea that I wanted to take from my mod degree that I'm going to give to you that I haven't talked in a public space
Okay.
before.
Okay.
And is as a avid gamer, there's these games like Fortnite, or Apex Legends, or Warzone, these
Yeah.
battle royale games, and they all have this idea of a season battle pass where every season there's like free tier and there's paid tier, and you get different rewards, like maybe those coins or something like that.
Yeah.
You get different rewards for doing different things on the platform or in the
Yeah.
game.
Yeah.
And so the more stuff you do, the more experience you get, the more you level up on that battle pass. And so
Yeah.
every season there's a new one, and it's a way of like keeping things fresh and new every
Yeah.
2 months, 3 months or so.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I wondered how that could be applied to like education, or in this case picking people's brains. And
Yeah.
I'll shut up now so you can speak on your ideas.
No, it's so good. I think gamification is so important, and we're actually seeing in ed tech gamification is like, yeah, just like increasing the valuation and really motivating people to consume education, which is great. I really want to make education a lifestyle. So, a few ideas that we've had to gamify Pick My Brain are number one, we want a leadership board just to show off who is sharing the most amount of knowledge in the world. So, like, we love sharing who's making the most money in the world. I would love to share who is actually sharing their knowledge the most. So, just like a natural leadership board would probably lead to that, like, let's see who's on the top. That's one way. The second way is in the consumption model. So one of my motivations is, again, to get people to pick as many perspectives as they can. Because I believe the more that we understand each other's perspectives, the more empathetic we will be to differences, culturally, industry-wise. Like, right, we all wear these hats, and I think the more that we understand someone across from us, even if they're super different than us, the better later on. So one way we want to motivate that is creating badges. So Audible has these great badges, right, that you can kind of collect depending on your activity. And the way I kind of copied that over to Pick My Brain was like, what if we had these badges that's like, hey, have you picked someone's brain about like these 10 topics? And we kind of could put like, you know, the topics that are kind of the top of mind. Do you know a little bit about blockchain? Do you know a little bit about AI? Do you know a little bit, like, it could be a tech basket. And you could stream 10 topics. And once you picked a brain that held that topic, which is their tag, you get a credit. And you know, and until you collect, it's like kind of like Girl Guides. Even you had 10 conversations with 10 different people about these 10 different topics, which means you have a little bit of a sense of what's going on in the world, so you get that badge. Another way you could do it, this would be like a lifetime achievement badge, but what if I wanted to motivate you to speak to, different people from different countries about their lives and about their country and their policy? Well, then there'd be another badge. Have you spoken to a brain from 10 different countries? You know, if you haven't done that yet, okay, well,
Or 7 continents.
Database, you got to go talk to someone in a different country now. Go pick away and learn about their country, right? So then you get that world badge. And I'd actually probably go to the brains and be like, all right, what other badges should we have? What do we want to motivate people to learn? And we could, you know, really guide, like, what I hope I have the power to do in the future is being like, all right, it seems like we all need to know a lot more about climate change and environment because it's just not coming through. So we're going to make a badge. We're going to onboard a bunch of people. We're going to build in motivations around that and like push that avenue of knowledge. But yeah, like, what is that like that? I'm almost at 1,000 bookings on Pick My Brain. I'm on 840. Thank you so much. I told my team, I was like, something better happen spectacular through the platform when I reach that milestone. I don't know what it is, but I need it to happen.
That'd be great.
Things like that, like when on YouTube, when you reach like 100,000 subscribers, I think they send you a plaque, right? So what can Pick My Brain do to be like, holy shit, you just had this many conversations, or wow, you've gotten this many tags on your profile, or you collected this many badges. So that's how I'm starting to think about working its way in.
Credly or Credible or something like that. There's a couple platforms that do like these digital badges, and one of them is
Yeah.
blockchain based too. That might be
Wow.
an interesting way. I I love that because I think that season pass idea would go well with those badges and levels and
Yeah.
leadership board, for example. It just still makes me think of those games I mentioned earlier because they kind of have that already. No, that's why you mentioned with EdTech there's gamification involved, but I
Yeah.
think none of them are going far enough with
Agreed.
gamification. I've used almost every LMS I can get my hands on. Like I
Oh,
can't really do Blackboard or some of the more college based
yeah.
ones, but like every WordPress one I've tried out or looked into. I've tried out Teachable, Thinkific, and
Yeah.
Kajabi. And
Wow.
this is kind of why I'm the tool guy. Like I go through
Love
all these
it.
different tools to try to see, and it's interesting because I want to do that with the gamification aspect with learning. That's
Yeah.
what the whole modular degree system's all about. Is getting
Yeah.
that diverse experience, a skill tree, if you will.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering how can we implement season passes, like we mentioned, or
Yeah.
badges, or a
Yeah.
leadership board, and how can that happen? And it's a way of thinking that, like,
Yeah.
again, goes back to information architecture, and we haven't done it in
Yeah.
this context, and having that transcontextual thinking as well.
Totally. We haven't designed it in. And the way I'm trying to design it is you notice like when you build a Pick My Brain profile, you get to tag yourself with all of the things that you know a lot about. And therefore how I imagine that working is if I picked your brain, I might get one of those credits as part of my like I've picked someone's brain about that. And again, I just want to collect that, and the motivation being that over my lifetime, right? I really want this to be a legacy product. I want my profile someday. I want to be at 10,000 bookings. You know, if I use this until I'm 80, that's very doable. It took me, almost 4 years to get to the 1,000. So yeah, like how long would that take? I don't know, but that means something. And I do also imagine it like being used like I just hate resumes. I just think they're the driest, most
Yeah.
boring basic version of who we are as an individual. I don't know how to I just don't understand them. But what I would love is if I was ever applying for something or wanted to be a board member, I would like submit all the conversations with whom I've had and about what. I'd be able to like go to Pick My Brain and like print my stats or something. Yeah, that would show
Well,
off. Yeah.
yeah. There's a link I sent you in the chat. I sent you a lot of links. I don't know if you noticed or not, because every time we had a good idea,
Yeah.
my brain was like, I need to send this tool to her. I need to send this tool to her.
Amazing.
And one of them was Crash.co, where it was made by Praxis, which is another education company kind of coming out there. And Crash is interesting because you can pitch yourself to a company. And so if you wanted to create a video, if you showing that job, it's like a modern version of a resume, if you will. And you have like different
Beautiful.
skills you show off, like, hey, I want to show off I know Airtable or Notion. You can make a video of you using that tool. And
Amazing.
that's a great, I think, way for Pick My Brain too.
I love
Or
it.
integration at least.
I love it. I love it so much. That's so good. And right below they have their really quick call to action, schedule a call or email me. This is the way, this is the omni-channel. Like why do the companies just I don't know what I want at Pick My Brain. I want someone to tell me what they want to do at Pick My Brain. I've hired
Yeah.
everyone at Pick My Brain because they'd be like, this is what I think I can do for you. I'm gonna present some value. I'm like, cool, hired. Like I don't necessarily know what I need. And companies don't actually know what they need. They're too pigeonholed in their own company to actually know like fully. Maybe
Yeah.
it's omnidirectional, but yeah, we've only really drilled it down one way instead of the other way. I think it's so silly.
Right.
Pitch me what you can do for me and I'll hire you if it sounds good.
Well,
Yeah.
and it's interesting too because I still think that Notion as like a team wiki or some kind of organizational glue for Pick My Brain will be useful too.
Yeah, well, I will. I think your tool guy is like one of the best headlines for you because you really are. It sounds like that is what you send me links on is like, right? Like all these tools that I had no idea existed. So in like one session, you could just get to know someone and be like, here are all the tools that you could dig into that's going to expand your thinking, that could expand your use of, whatever you're up to. That's like such a cool skill. I love it.
Well,
Yeah.
and you mentioned your research guy earlier. It's like, I'm a research guy too. I could put that on there. And
Yeah.
it's interesting because when I had a problem, like before I found Notion
Yeah.
or even going into just other tools, I was trying to find a way to create my content production ecosystem, if you will.
Yes.
And I kept feeling isolated with these silos. Like you had video and audio and written, and everyone says that they're all siloed. But when you look at some of the greatest creators, they're content repurposing. They're having that
Yes.
circular system where
Yeah.
make a blog post, you can use text to speech to make audio out of it. You
Yeah.
can also do that with a video, like we mentioned with the Reddit videos earlier.
Yeah.
Other way around, you can transcribe an audio or video and these kind of things. And so I created my main series, the Omni content, to make a circular thing. My
love
point is though, I needed a way to organize that. You know what I mean? I needed a way to actually like, how do I make the actual system of me creating each of these episodes? And so I tried ClickUp and Monday and all these different project and task management tools.
Yeah.
I tried like 80 of them,
Yeah.
or like looked into it 80 of them. I didn't try
Holy
all of them,
cow.
but I dug into as many as I could, and I made a blog post actually just listing them all out because I was like, someone needs to do this. And same thing happened with like email marketing. I wanted to see which email marketing tools were out there, or social media marketing. I've literally tried over 90 tools for social media marketing.
This was such a skill. Like I think
it's like it's insane.
I would come to you, I'd be like, tell me which email marketing tool to use because I don't want to do that research. I just want you to guide me into it's so much work. That's crazy.
Well, there's certain tools that's better for certain people too.
I love it. That's such a good skill.
Thank you. Well, and speaking of tools and skills, and that led me to Notion because I was able to create my own system in Notion.
Yeah.
And the way I went about it and that kind of thing. And that still kind of goes back to this whole modular degree concept as well, because I wanted to create my own education. That was my motivation. And I wanted to help people do their own thing too, which is why I made a template in Notion for that. And I wanted to ask you in particular, because I've been working on that mod degree system, which is that self-curated education.
Yeah.
I'd like to ask you about your year-on thing that you did after university, because you made up your own university schedule. I was like, I want to know, what is that like?
I did, and I just want to like advocate of how beautiful. Why are we not ever driven or motivated or told to like make our own university schedule? What would that include?
Right.
What an excellent assignment, even in and of itself, to just map that out.
Like think about it and ideate.
Yeah. Ideate. Even if I got a bunch of, you're actually giving me an idea for a workshop again. Like I'm like, all right, I'll do a 3-hour workshop where we just build our dream university schedule because that's a good exercise in and of itself. But yeah,
if you do that, let me know.
I will.
Yeah,
I went to school for 8 years and loved it, but again, still found that school was pretty siloed. I thought it was going to be more diverse than it was, right? And it didn't quite scratch that itch, but at the end, when I decided to leave my job and like rediscover what I wanted to do, I decided I'm going to take a year on, I called it. It wasn't a year off. It was like a total year on for Max, designed by Max, built by Max, for Max, to support Max on this next adventure. And I was like, yeah, why haven't I done this? Like, I went to school and did what they wanted me to do forever. I know how to learn. Like, what is this going to look like? And I did. I mapped out each of my months. There was a few things I really wanted to learn and do. I really wanted to see where online education was at. That was like 7 years ago now. So it was kind of like just getting started. So similar to you, I just like tried every single platform that was offering online classes and took an online class and like did a mental map of like, okay, what is that onboarding process? What is the quality like? Do I get a certification? Just getting a general sense of how fast people could learn. So I did that for a while. I wanted to drive across Canada and try all the different campsites out, which was like in the schedule while reading books. So I built that in and did a little like, I tried to do it on a certain budget. And so I like practiced budgeting while driving across Canada. I knew I wanted to read all of the books that were on my shelf that I never had time to read. So I actually I flew to Maui. One of the months was going to Maui for a month, living on the beach. And like my only job in Maui was to read these 12 books. And like write notes on it and just like focus entirely on one task. I wanted to learn how to focus on doing one thing. And so my only job in Maui was to like be warm and read. I studied every peer-to-peer marketplace that possibly existed out there because I was really fascinated with peer-to-peer marketplaces. That's kind of what motivated me to move over to start Pick My Brain. I made a list of all of my smartest friends and booked a one-on-one session with all of them and like just talked to them. This is before like recording was a thing, I guess, or I didn't even think to do it. But I was like, I just want to know what everyone is doing and what's the most important thing to them and what their mission is and like what drives them, just so I can get a better sense of humans. So I did that and like mapped that all out. And I really wish I would have like built blogs on each of those. But yeah, I just like consciously wrote down, it was more project based. I like knew the projects I wanted to do and then I just like overlaid them onto an adventure and consumed it. And it was so expansive. It was like the most expansive year. It was so freeing. It basically curated Pick My Brain. It like birthed this idea child out of me. And I don't know, just allowed me to express myself in a way that I never felt like I fully could do at university. And now I want to like kind of advocate, like when I have some more time again, I'm going to advocate that everyone, when you're done university, take a year on, not to just go travel, combine that, but go deeper, you know, like,
or after high school even.
Or high school. Yeah. Like what is on your learning list? and let's
Yeah.
develop that curriculum. Yeah, because you can learn anything you want. You just have to know what you want to learn.
Well, and you mentioned it was project based, and I think there's a big rise in project based learning and like project capstones when it comes to like MOOCs. And it makes me think too, like how can you like one of the biggest challenges for the degree is like how do you prove your knowledge? How do you go
Yeah.
around like you said you could like record those conversations and that's a proof. Like you had a
Yeah.
podcast in,
Yeah.
or if you had a book reading, you could summarize it and make that into a blog post.
Yeah.
And again, that's proof that you read that book.
Yeah.
And projects are a good way to go about it too. And it makes me think, like, how do you organize your degree then, that modular degree?
Yeah.
Well, you can do the basic semester base, which is kind of what I did,
Yeah.
but I think other people might want to be more creative with it. You did projects, and so you
Yeah.
could organize it by project, and then
Yeah.
organize all the different content, like, okay, this conversation, this book, this
Yeah.
course, all into that project, and then
Yeah.
that's your week or something like that, or month or
Yeah.
year.
Yeah, we had talked about that the first. I remember we jammed about that on our first call. As like, how do
Yeah.
you stack that, and what is that? How do you do that over your lifetime? Like, what does that look like? I wonder if you're like setting up your Notion to like think about, to look back at your learning journey, right? It is
Yeah.
like a journey, and if we become more proactive about consciously building it and knowing that you literally can learn anything you want. We become more in command or more empowered to design our base of knowledge, our interest. Like it's so like, yeah, it's so brilliant. I really don't like. I really feel like I'm backwards.
Well, yeah, and guess what? The next economy is the knowledge economy. So
It
the
really
more you
is.
learn, the more you have to actually spend.
Exactly. And so now that's actually full circle. That's a perfect first for full circle is like consume this, then you'll be able to sell it. You'll actually be able to support yourself the more you learn. Like what a beautiful economy is that. I love that. Yeah.
I love that. And a couple more questions before we wrap up too.
Yeah.
How did the 5-day challenge go for Pick My Brain?
Oh my goodness, it was such good lessons and learnings. I have realized that in order to make someone, I'm always seeking the best way to make someone the most successful on Pick My Brain, right? Because as you download a new tool, you really have to kind of like invest in it, learn it, play with it, experience it, have it feel something so you keep using it. So, right, just like letting people stumble on and build it themselves works, but what works so much better is bringing a cohort of people together to do it collectively. And what I learned from bringing people together over the course of 5 days, so something that's totally downloadable, is that everyone first of all, is totally accountable to everyone because the first session I do on the first day is bring everyone together to meet, greet, and dream out loud. And so everyone kind of becomes like invested in everyone else's dreams, which is perfectly. And like, what are you wanting to offer? Starting that conversation. And then day 2, 3, and 4 is independent work where I give a master class for each day and we take a different component of our Pick My Brain profile and we build it. But then we have to post our homework in a private Facebook group and everyone has to comment. So again, sometimes when you're building a profile, you're in your own head. It's kind of hard to sell. It's kind of hard to think about it. But when you see a bunch of other people come up with ideas, you're like, oh, I could be, the product guy. I could be an instructor. I could do these things. When you have 10 people doing that, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, I definitely can do this. There's just that like comfort and confidence. And then on the last day, when everyone has created their profile and practiced building these prices, then we actually shop each other. So it's like a shop the brains. And then that allows me to make sure everyone on the network gets a booking, experiences what receiving a booking like that is from. They get their reviews going. They both act as a consumer and a provider, which is essential for this equation to work. You have to buy and sell knowledge for this to work. You can't just be one or the other. So it's like this full circle. It's like a blitz challenge that sets them up for complete success. And what I've seen, I've done 2 of them now. I used to do 5 weeks, but I think I can condense it into 5 days. But these little cohorts stay together. They're like creating groups on Clubhouse by themselves. They're getting together on their own. So yeah, you've got this little world that you can always ask questions for later. So I love it. I'm such a huge fan.
I still think that making your own clubhouse for Pick My Brain will be a great idea. I think
have
that'd
a
be just
club.
brilliant.
Yeah.
No, I meant like make your own like section of Pick My Brain like built in.
Oh,
That's what I was thinking, because I think Clubhouse is still too limited, and I think that the integration would be great, but having your own and that's like built into Pick My Brain, like so, like you have the panelists, and so like you said, the profiles on the app, but like the panelists there, like, hey, I really like what they're talking about during this meetup that we're doing. I'm gonna click their profile directly and go straight to their Pick My Brain profile
and book them. It's
instead of having a couple extra steps.
Yeah, you're so right.
Clubhouse app.
I'm gonna go. My mission now is to raise I'm gonna raise a little bit around from my brains, not from VCs, but I need a little bit more more capital so I can invest in these ideas up front because I know they'll pay out later. But man, the time investment involved in some of these projects, there's just like so much to build.
So big.
But I've also realized how when I have a team of developers now, and I kind of know how to use them to build things like a little bit quickly. And when you realize that power, when you can build what you want quickly, it's just like, you know, my platform can potentially, hypothetically, be available to anyone in the world that wants to sell knowledge, right? And that tool only really cost me $150,000 to $200,000 to build. But the revenue potential behind that idea is like $1 billion. Yeah, it's just like so big. So it's like, no, get money and build the tech. Like I was yesterday to get over the idea of needing money to build this. I was like, you know what? To start a restaurant, you need at least $1 million. And a restaurant is geographically constrained, you know, and is limited. You need $1 million because you need to design the space, you need your cutlery, you need your first big production line of food, you have to buy that up front, and you have to sell it, you have to hire people. There's so much that goes into it. And the idea is you give someone $1 million and over the time they'll pay that back. But I'm like, oh, pick my brain. I don't even need $1 million. And my potential is like so much greater. So I'm just like trying to like be like, no, go get money and build these like such cool things that I could give, you know, my network the opportunity to use that will provide so much value. So I'm like on this kick right now of like, just go get some capital and keep building.
Right.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
Well, and it leads me to my next question pretty well too. How can we unite the world's most interesting people?
We can unite them by all of us deciding to, first of all, number one, build a knowledge profile. I do not know if there's not a profile out there that I've seen focuses directly on your interestingness and what you know. So we all have to agree to build this standardized profile that if we want to gather all the world's most interesting people, we need a profile that's going to show them off. So that's number one. And then number two, in order for me to know that I can unite with those smart people and that they are open and available to being consumed, then I need that call to action. I need to know that you have put your hand up and you are open and available to being utilized or connected with. And then like that third level that I said, that community element where we now invite all these smart people together once a month, every month for the rest of our lives to just exchange, would just provide wonders. So I think those three elements are the way to do it. That's my path anyway.
Yeah, I like that. And it makes me think too, just like when I don't know where I got that question from, but I know I saw it from somewhere where you wanted to unite the world's most interesting people. You like either said that on a profile or on a podcast, and it made me think of the Dos Equis guys, like the world's most interesting man. And I told you beforehand in the show that like I would have like this persona when I go to karaoke, and I would kind of keep him in mind when I made that persona. Like I want to be the most interesting person in the room, and I would like float around the room and talk to everybody. And it made me think like, how can we do that in a digital way? Like how can we be the most interesting platform, the most interesting person, or the most interesting brain in this case?
Yeah, I love that. I love that you have that thought. Like, what if more of us had that thought? Like, how am I going to be the most interesting person when I enter this space? And what do I need to be equipped with to be that? And for me, I feel like what's giving me the most interesting or giving me an ability to have like a unique value add in rooms is meeting different people. Like before Pick My Brain, I couch surfed. I just couch surfed I've stayed with like 90 people and have hosted like tons more. And that has just opened every door, you know, and I can like pull and reference all these different things because of that mini conversation I've had with someone. So yeah, how do you increase your interest? I just want to make you more interesting. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to sell you 10 to 20 conversations and I want you to go become interesting with them. Yeah. Well, and once again, you asked me before the show too, like, why do I do this show, for example? And I have multiple series. It's only one series for the Polycast. But these conversations that I've had with people like you have brought so much to my knowledge base and pool. Like, there's certain things I mentioned in certain episodes that I pulled from other guests. Yes. Of course. I think podcasters are actually, they're just the most, they're by virtue interesting because they are the storytellers and the facilitators and they do get to combine the ideas and see what everyone's working on. I love them. Yeah.
So where can people find you online, Maxine?
You can go to visit www.pickmybrain.world. I definitely invite you first to book a brain and experience a brain because it's like no other experience on the web right now. Please just browse and see and get inspired by the things people are creating. And as you're being motivated and inspired by these individuals, consider applying yourself. If you want to search me directly, just go into our search and put Maxine. I offer 13 free calls every single month for 20 minutes with anyone who just wants to chat. So I'd love to hear from you. Tell me that you heard me on Dustin's podcast, and I will give you something in addition as well. So those are the two best places to find me, or on Instagram.
That's wonderful. Yeah. I have links in the description for you as well.
Amazing.
And so what could be well, you gave a call to action. What could be a call to growth for the audience?
Ooh, good one. Pick a brain. Experience a brain. Go and have a moment. Put a little bit of budget in your, just like going out for dinner, right? You're going to go out for dinner and you're going to treat yourself with nice food. Go book a session with a human being that intrigues you, and try to take them as far as you can, and you will grow. I promise that you will grow in that conversation, and you'll just be different because of it.
Yeah. Well, once again, this is Dustin Miller, PolyInnovator, and Maxine Cunningham on the Polymath podcast. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.